The Peace Bearers. In the center of the Galactic Diplomatic Forum, under the cold lights of the Interstellar Senate Dome, 100 species argued about a single species, humans. Their presence is destabilizing, hissed Ambassador Hectroll of the Zirin Combine. They befriend everything. Even predators. Even virus-spawned sentients. Exactly, purred Ambassador Vither of the Urkai cluster, her segmented tail twitching. They united the Wekrail with the Urnari after 4 centuries of blood feud. Through poetry. Poetry, another delegate scoffed. They used cookies to tame the Lorcan deathworms. Murmurs spread like wildfire through the chamber. Cookies. Hugs. Campfire songs. Humanity had become the galactic anomaly, not because of military might or technological supremacy, but because they refused to stop making friends. Now, they wanted permission to approach the Karnax, a genetically engineered war species marooned on the ash-covered moon of Jiraktul. Engineered by the long-extinct Valari Empire, the Karnax were made to kill, built for war and violence. When the Valari fell, their living weapons remained, angry, directionless, and very, very dangerous. No species dared contact them. Except humans. And leading the mission was Captain Elise Rho. Captain Rho stood aboard the diplomatic ship Unity Ember, arms folded as she watched the cursed moon grow larger through the forward viewport. Jiraktul looked like a dying coal, scarred by war, ringed in burnt atmosphere, constantly shedding ash into orbit. "You're thinking this is a terrible idea," said Lieutenant Marcos, her comms officer and old friend. "I'm thinking it's exactly the kind of idea humans are famous for," Elise replied with a half-smile. "And exactly the kind that changes everything." She turned to the team, 6 of them total, a blend of diplomats, xenologists, and 1 peace-trained combat medic. No weapons. No armor. Just stories, language packs, survival gear, and offerings. They weren't here to fight. They were here to talk. "Let's go over it one more time," Elise said. "The Karnax respond to strength, but not in the way most assume. Strength of body, yes, but also of mind. They respect conviction. Persistence. And they don't understand fearlessness. To them, that's not bravery, it's programming. What they admire is courage despite fear." She picked up a box of carefully selected artifacts. Illustrated human storybooks, 3D printed sculptures of unity, and a solar-powered music box that played Earth lullabies. "They've never been offered peace. Only war or exile. So we offer something else, connection." Marcos raised an eyebrow. "You really think a people engineered for war can be reasoned with?" "They're not machines," Elise said softly. "They've been treated like weapons for too long. No one ever asked what they wanted." The dropship touched down on Jiraktul under a sky choked with dust and fire. The ash fell like snow, coating the hull and softening the echoes of distant, rhythmic thuds. Cannons? Ritual combat? Earthquakes? It was hard to tell on this cursed world. 3 Karnax awaited them at the edge of a crumbling crater. Towering at nearly 3 meters, plated in scaled armor and muscle, they were terrifying. Each held a different weapon, an axe fused with plasma coils, a war spear crackling with arc energy, and what looked like a bone-forged blade, still slick with blood. Elise approached, heart pounding. She held up both hands, open, palms out, universal gesture of peace, and bowed. "I am Captain Elise Rho, representative of humanity and the Galactic Forum. We come in peace." The central Karnax warrior snarled, voice deep enough to rattle her ribcage. "Peace is for the dead." "Then let's talk among ghosts," Elise said, standing firm. The Karnax paused. Their reptilian eyes narrowed, studying her not with rage, but with curiosity. She opened the offering case and gently laid out items: the books, the sculptures, the music box. She wound it. A soft, tinkling melody floated out, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." Silence. The wind howled. Then, one of the Karnax, the youngest, stepped forward and knelt beside the music box, tilting his head. "What is this?" he rasped. Elise smiled gently. "A song we sing to children. To remind them they're safe. That even in the dark, they're not alone." The Karnax leader snorted. "Foolish sentiment." "Maybe," Elise said. "But we've survived because of foolish hope." The Karnax stared at her. The war species expected fear. She gave them music. They expected violence. She offered stories. They were not yet allies. Not yet friends. But the war had paused. And sometimes that was how peace began. The Karnax Protocol. The Karnax did not smile. They did not shake hands. They did not offer words of welcome. But they did not attack. Which, by Elise Rho's measure, was a very promising start. The warlord who had spoken earlier introduced himself simply as Vorak, though Elise suspected it wasn't a name, it was a designation. Karnax didn't use names the way most species did. To them, identity was forged through deeds, not syllables. Vorak gestured for Elise and her team to follow. The terrain was brutal, jagged rock formations and scorched soil that crunched underfoot like broken glass. In the distance, plumes of fire rose from old battlegrounds still burning. This wasn't a society. It was a war camp. Their destination was a hollowed-out bunker formed from a crashed Volari dreadnought, rusted, gutted, and repurposed as a fortress. Inside, more Karnax waited. Eyes followed the humans with predator intensity. Elise counted at least 20 warriors. All armed. All silent. Vorak turned to her. Speak. No ceremony. No niceties. Just command. Elise didn't flinch. We come not to conquer or control. We come to offer something that no one else has, a future. A low growl rumbled through the crowd. We were not built for a future, one warrior snarled. We were built to end futures. Yes, Elise said carefully. You were made by the Volari as weapons. But the Volari are gone. They abandoned you. Murmurs. The truth was known but never spoken aloud. It stung like a fresh wound. You are no longer tools, she said. You are survivors. And that means you get to choose what you are next. A hiss. We do not choose. We fight. Elise stepped forward and opened her pack. She laid out 3 objects on the table made from melted steel beams. 1. A human-made hollow reader, containing hundreds of Earth stories translated into Karnaxi script. 2. A children's book, The Lion and the Mouse, simple, short, yet profound. 3. A chessboard. What are these? Vorak asked, suspicious. Stories, she said. Games. Teachings. Each one about strength, not just through might, but through cleverness. Compassion. Trust. You offer toys? A Karnax barked in disbelief. Elise's voice didn't waver. I offer understanding. A silence followed. Thick. Heavy. Then, Vorak walked to the board and picked up a knight. This is battle. Yes, Elise said. A different kind. He stared for a long time. Later that evening, under the flickering lights of scavenged power cells, Elise sat across from Vorak with a chessboard between them. The other Karnax circled like wolves, watching, whispering. He made his first move. Clumsy. Aggressive. She countered. Clean. Controlled. You fight with patience, Vorak muttered. I fight to win, Elise said calmly. And sometimes that means not attacking at all. He grunted. A few more moves passed. You believe we can become like you? Vorak asked. No, Elise replied honestly. I believe you can become like you. Something new. Something you choose. We can help you find out what that is. He studied her with his burning gold eyes. You come without weapons. No guards. You risk your life. Why? Elise leaned back, folded her hands. Because someone had to go first. Someone had to believe that you were worth more than the war. The Karnax were quiet now. Something shifted in their stance. Not submission, not acceptance, but curiosity. The first crack in the wall. Then a younger Karnax stepped forward. He was smaller, his armor dented and self-forged. Why do you want us as friends? He asked, voice low. Everyone else fears us. Hates us. Elise turned to him. Because no one else ever asked you who you wanted to be. The Karnax warrior blinked. No one had ever posed the question. Not in generations. Not since their creators gave them a single directive. Kill. Vorak stood. His expression was unreadable. Tomorrow, he said, you will participate in our trial. Elise tensed. What kind of trial? A trial of worth, he said. Not strength. Not blood. Words. Stories. You will speak before the clan. If they find your tale worthy, they will listen. If not. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. That night, Elise sat under a torn section of the dreadnought's hull, looking up at the toxic clouds that blocked out the stars. You're going to tell them stories? Marcos asked, worried. Elise nodded. It's all we've got. But stories are how we've survived. How we've healed. If they can see themselves in our stories, maybe they'll start writing their own. She pulled the book closer, flipped to a page. Once upon a time, she murmured, there was a lion. And on a world made for war, a whisper of peace prepared to speak. The story duel. The Karnax had no temples, no halls of worship. But they had an arena. It lay sunken into the bone dust of the wasteland, ringed with monolithic slabs etched in a language lost to most of the galaxy. Dozens of Karnax gathered in silence, not as spectators of bloodsport, but as judges. This was their trial of worth. Elise Rho stood at the center, the heat from the scorched ground rising in shimmering waves around her. Her translator earpiece hummed quietly as Vorak stepped forward. You will speak, he said, projecting his voice to the entire ring. Not to beg, not to persuade, but to prove you carry something that cannot be forged in war, truth. If your story has none, we return to what we know, blades. No pressure, Elise thought grimly. She looked up at the faces around her. Hardened, scarred, expectant. These were not monsters. These were survivors who had never known anything but violence, and had been told that was all they could ever be. She took a breath, and began. I want to tell you about a man named Michael Ramirez, she said. He was a soldier, a killer. Like you, he was made for war, shaped by it, defined by it. Until one day, he found himself behind enemy lines, alone, wounded and lost. The Karnax were still. He stumbled across a house. It was abandoned, except for a child. A boy from the other side, hiding in a cellar, terrified. Michael had every reason to leave him. Every command told him that the boy was the enemy's future. But instead, he put down his gun. She looked at them all. He gave the boy food, water. He sang to him, protected him. For 3 days, they waited. When rescue came, he carried that boy to safety. That child later became a peace ambassador. Helped end the war. And Michael, well, he never picked up a gun again. A murmur ran through the crowd. Elise paused, then reached into her satchel. She held up a worn photo, the real Michael and the boy, smiling, decades later. It passed from claw to claw, hand to hand. Strength isn't just what you can destroy, she said. It's what you can protect. Vorak narrowed his eyes. Words. Pretty illusions. What makes this more than weakness? Elise stepped closer. You want blood. Let me tell you about Earth. Our past is drowning in it. We fought over gods, borders, skin color, oil, everything. We nearly ended ourselves a dozen times. She let the words hang heavy. But we learned. Slowly. Painfully. We started listening. Sharing. Singing. Telling stories. We remembered how to be more than what we were made for. She looked straight at Vorak. Just like you can. There was silence. Then a Karnax elder, missing one arm, armor faded with time, stepped forward. I have a story. Elise blinked. This wasn't in the plan. The elder pointed to the stars. We once had children. Hatchlings. Small. Curious. But they died. The wars didn't wait for them to grow. We were told that mercy was weakness, so we did not weep. We did not bury them. We fought harder. His voice cracked. But I remember the smallest one, drawing with ash on stone, telling stories to herself. She made monsters into friends. He looked at Elise. Your kind reminds me of her. A silence heavier than any weapon settled on the crowd. Vorak stepped into the circle again. He looked down at the photo in his clawed hand. Then at Elise. "What do you call this strength?" he asked. She smiled softly. "Hope." That night, the Karnax camp didn't ring with the sound of combat drills. It rang with voices, talking, low and uncertain, but present. Elise sat by a small fire beside Marcos, who passed her a steaming cup of nutrient broth. "You did it," he said. "No," Elise replied, watching a pair of Karnax argue over the rules of chess. "They did it. They just needed a mirror." She looked toward Vorik, who was speaking quietly with a young Karnax who'd asked why anyone would want to be their friend. They weren't friends yet, but they weren't enemies either. And sometimes that was enough to begin. Peace in the Warborn. 3 weeks after the trial, the Karnax fortress looked different. Not softer, not tamed, but changed. The ever-present clamor of weapons being forged now blended with the scratch of styluses against tablets, the clatter of chess pieces, and the slow, uncertain sound of language being written, not shouted. No one expected the Karnax to become pacifists. That wasn't the point. The point was, they were choosing. Captain Elise Rho walked through the heart of the old war camp as Karnax warriors stood aside, nodding in respectful silence. Her presence was no longer seen as fragile. It was honored. Inside the dreadnought-turned hall, Vorik waited for her. He stood beside a crude but functional comms array, Earth-designed, Karnax-adapted. Across the stone table were data tablets, trade maps, even a draft of a cultural exchange program. "You are leaving," Vorik said without looking up. Elise smiled faintly. "For now. I've been summoned back to the Forum. You've made quite the impression." Vorik's massive arms folded. "Some call it weakness." "Then they've never seen a war species decide not to kill," Elise said. "That takes more strength than war." He turned to her. "We have begun something. But it will not be easy. Peace is harder than blood." "Always," Elise agreed. "But now you're not alone in it." There was a long pause. Then Vorik reached into a small satchel at his side and pulled out a rectangular stone. On it, carved in angular strokes, was a Karnax word. "Tejveren." "Friend," he said simply, offering it to her. Elise accepted it with both hands. "Thank you." "Do not thank me," Vorik said. "Thank the child who sang songs to her enemies. Thank the soldier who put down his gun. Thank the fool who told us stories and believed we'd listen." He gave the faintest growl that might have been a laugh. "Even now, I do not understand why you care." She looked him in the eye. "Because once, we were you." When Elise returned to the Unity Ember, her team greeted her with quiet celebration. "We've just received word," Marcos said, unable to hide the grin on his face. "The Karnax have formally petitioned for status as an observing species in the Galactic Forum." Elise blinked. "Already?" "Apparently, they're eager to negotiate trade routes and enroll 2 of their young in a human education exchange." She exhaled slowly, chest tight with emotion. "They're really doing it." "They're not weapons anymore," Marcos said. "They're people." The Galactic Forum didn't know what to do. The declaration spread like wildfire. The Karnax have spoken. They want peace. Ambassadors who once labeled the Karnax as irreversible monsters now scrambled to adjust their policies. Some accused humanity of manipulation. Others demanded oversight. But most watched in silent awe as a species forged in laboratories for endless war began to build libraries, schools, and diplomatic channels, because humans had dared to believe in them. In one viral transmission, a Karnax adolescent named Reltalk, studying Earth culture, stood before a class of human children and said in broken English, "We were told to be enemies. But I found books. And I found friends." Months later, Elise visited Earth. In a small school on the outskirts of Nairobi, she stepped into a bright room where children painted murals on the walls: stars, monsters, heroes, peace. In the corner sat Reltalk, surrounded by laughing human children, helping a girl draw a Karnax warrior not with a blade, but with an open hand. She knelt beside him. "Do you like it here?" He nodded solemnly. "I like that I don't have to be angry." Elise swallowed hard. "I still feel it," he added. "The anger. It's there." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's okay. What matters is what you do with it. He looked up at her and smiled, just a little. I draw. That night, Elise sat beneath Earth stars. For the first time in months, she could see them clearly. No ash clouds, no battlefield skies, just the infinite above. Beside her, Marcos handed her a hot drink. You think they'll make it? She nodded slowly. Yes. It won't be easy. But they've taken the first step. Marcos chuckled. What is it with us, huh? Making friends with the galaxy's nightmares. Elise leaned back against the bench, watching the sky. Because no one else will. That's our madness. Our gift. We befriend everything. She smiled. Even war species.